I know I'm an open book, so.
Joshua Lee is an active duty police sergeant in Arizona with nearly 2 decades of experience in law enforcement. He specializes in complex investigations involving racketeering, white collar crime, and cryptocurrency. He is a recognized expert in financial crime investigations, serving as a consultant and expert witness for financial institutions while also advising on artificial intelligence applications for government use. Wow, that's a mouthful. Joshua also is an adjunct professor in law, criminal justice, technology, and writing, and the owner of Secret Squirrel Press, a content writing and consulting company. Joshua, that's quite a collection of skills. And first of all, congratulations on the recent publishing of your article titled Rebuilding Your Life After Trauma in Authority magazine.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My passion is healthy relationships. So I have to ask, how do you maintain healthy relationships with your wife and 2 children and an Australian Shepherd dog while fulfilling all of these responsibilities?
So the very first thing I learned early on, and this is actually before I started law enforcement, is extreme time management. So I do have ADHD, suffered through ADHD as a kid. Into high school, wasn't saying I was a wreck in high school, but I needed a little bit more guidance. So I got guided in the right direction, and I learned to master time management. So the number one thing I do is I used to schedule everything out every 15 minutes. Now I got so good now I don't have to do it that way. I have a schedule literally in my head.
Mhm.
But I started with a 15-minute schedule for years, actually decades. I did that. And for me and my kids and my family, I obviously live a very busy career. Uh, and I'll, it doesn't, I mean, I guess it sounds bad, but I'll schedule them in to make sure that I'm spending time with them. If it's on the calendar, I'm there. I'm devoted, and that's the easiest way to keep me on track.
I think the easiest way to fulfill what we say our priorities are is to put our priorities on the calendar. You know, you call your condition that you wrote about cumulative PTSD. How long did it take for multiple traumas to interfere with your emotional well-being?
Well, I guess how long did it take me to recognize it, or how long did it take to happen? So that's different,
Yeah,
different, right? So obviously pretty quick. So in law enforcement, we see horrific things. I did not realize how much I have actually been through in my career, especially early on as an early patrol officer. I did not understand and recognize the severity of actually what I went through. I thought that was normal. It wasn't until almost 10 years has passed, and that's when I really, well, when I became a supervisor, really is when I recognized, hey, my experience on patrol was definitely not the normal for patrol officers. So yeah, it happened early on in my career, but I recognized it way later in my career.
what were some of the symptoms that made you recognize this isn't normal?
Um, well, cumulative PTSD is one of those things, and I mentioned it in my article. It's every time you have an event, it's like a little monster that you literally have, and you stuff that monster in a bucket, and that goes in a bucket. You put a lid on it. That's all fine and dandy. One monster's fine and dandy, two, maybe three, four, but it starts piling on top of each other, and those little monsters are always trying to get out. Um, I noticed I noticed my symptoms um, pretty early on, I guess, in my career. So I tried to take measures the best that I knew possible to mitigate those.
Uh-huh.
But it really wasn't until I had a basic event, not even, it's not even a critical event. That's not like I wasn't actively involved in a shooting or anything crazy. It was just a minor event that literally kicked that bucket of monsters right over. And
Oh,
that's when I just tanked. And I've never experienced that before. It literally felt like all the monsters left my head and they were all over the place, and um, being scatterbrained and not being able to think, not sleeping well, not eating well, not exercising well. Yeah, I definitely knew that there was an issue. Nobody had to tell me there was an issue. I definitely recognized it. So.
so you lost self-control or self-management when all the monsters came out of the bucket at once?
Yeah, so it's not self-control so much. It just, I noticed that I didn't have the control over my life that I typically did. I wasn't I wasn't focused as well as I should be. Obviously, for me, it was sleeping issues were really major, um, and then not being present at anything I did. So that was another thing, is I always had something in the back of my mind, and I always typically do, but not to this extent where my mind never shut off. It would just kept on going. I couldn't fall asleep. When I did, it was subpar sleep. I'd be at work and I would just be nonstop thinking. I couldn't get any of my negative thoughts out of my head. Or if I did, I'm like, hey, they're gone. And then they're right back in there. You're like, wait a second, I just got rid of them. And it was that circle, that loop, that really led me down a interesting path.
So I'm going into some depth about this because someone who's watching this video is going to perhaps hear you and recognize some patterns going on in their own life. So there was a lot of trouble sleeping. You weren't eating regularly or as well as maybe you had been. You were mentally, emotionally distracted, so you weren't able to be present with whatever was going on in front of you. Did I cover it, or was there anything else?
No, it was no that you covered it pretty nicely. Physical wise, so it's really interesting. So it not only affected me mentally, but physically. I've always been big into exercise, big into sports, big into lifting weights. And I noticed, especially before I started seeking treatment, a light weight on a barbell now seemed 10 times as heavy. And that's really where I was like, oh, this is affecting me way more than just my mind. Things that are super light became heavy, like injuries. um it does affect both your body and your soul.
I learned in many of the things that, lessons I've learned, that when we're emotionally down, it does limit our physical strength. The physical strength literally goes down when our emotions are upset. So thank you for that detailed list and sharing, because I know that's going to be valuable to someone who's listening. I'm interested in your 5 habits that help you manage trauma today, especially ice baths. I'm hearing more and more about the value of ice baths. Tell me what they do for you.
So I thought it was a bunch of hapoopy. I've actually been doing ice baths for a long time because of sports, right? So
Okay.
sports, it's very known that ice baths will cut that breakdown on your physical body. So if you're tearing muscles or if you need that recovery, that extra recovery, ice baths are great for that. The mental health aspects, I never took that into consideration until I was specifically doing them for mental health reasons. That changed my life. That's the single, if I could point to one thing besides my wife that changed me, the biggest change, it was the ice bath. It is, for me, it's one of the most relaxing things that I can do. When I was going through all my symptoms, I was doing them 3 times a week. So 3 times, 4 times a week. Once I was getting in that more of that recovery stage, I just schedule it in on Sundays. So that's my Sunday routine, is jumping in the ice bath. I liken the ice bath to like a cleansing. This sounds a little weird, but trust me on it. When you jump
Okay.
in, your body goes through different phases. And make a long story short, your body thinks it's going to die. You're not going to die, but your body thinks it's going to die. Once you get past all those stages and you relax, when you get out, it's like all of your fears, all of your troubles, all of your worries, all of everything is left in the water. Very, very weird feeling. And I was telling my wife, I remember as soon as I started getting into more of the meditation and more of the mental health aspects of the ice tub, I'd get out and I wouldn't have a care in the world. Like my house could burn down. Who cares, right? So you have that mentality. It's because your body thought it was going to die and it didn't. So it
Okay.
floods your body with like good feelings, and it is pretty fun, especially when you have those mental health issues, to jump in there, learn breathing techniques, and then get out. You're like, oh, this does work. So yeah, I've passed that knowledge on to many law enforcement officers and firemen and military, and now actually doctors are getting into it for mental health things with, pertaining to surgeries and death in the ER room. So it's pretty fun.
I've heard that it's very invigorating physically, but I've never heard about the mental, emotional uh, benefits of an ice bath. How long do you stay in the ice bath?
Well, I've been doing it a very long time. So I'll stay in there about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Uh, the you have to get to the point. Now you do it safely, and I actually teach how to do that properly. But you get to a point where your body goes through three different phases. That third phase is the actual relaxation phase. Once you get into that, and it only takes me about 3 minutes to get into that phase, it's just like a jacuzzi. I'll sit there with my arms out, um, just relaxed as can be. I actually don't want to get out. So I have to set a timer. I have to tell my wife, hey, I'm going in. If I don't come out in 20 minutes, come and get me. Because I really don't want to. It's so relaxing at that point because your body realizes it's not going to die. You're now not cold because you're not getting out. So your body goes into a different mode physically and actually relaxes your whole body. That's the point that you need to get if you're going to be doing it for mental health reasons, not just a quick jump in and jump out. I mean, it's nice, but that's not going to help you mentally.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the detail. I I'm tempted to try it, although uh, I can't even imagine liking being in an ice bath. But you've convinced me. There's some real good reasons to try it.
There is.
We mentioned family before, but prioritizing family over work is one of your coping mechanisms. You mentioned your wife and how supportive she's been. What are some ways or habits that you have developed for maintaining the connection with your wife and your children?
I think the biggest thing, as far as spousal connection goes, uh, scheduling time in. But I have now adjusted my schedule to leave Friday nights open. My kids are old enough they could be left at the house by themselves. So we leave Friday nights. That is our time to go and do whatever we need to go do. Go on dinner, go to a movie, something along those lines, and then be consistent on it. So we're pretty good on not missing a date night. The kids, I need to do it more. We actually used to schedule in dates for our kids.
Uh-huh.
They actually asked me about that. So we need to start back up. My kid's back in school. So yeah, it's more important to actually schedule dates with your kids. And we used to just go hang out and eat ice cream and walk around the store and just hang out with your kids.
Yes. So many of the happily married couples that I've interviewed talk about non-negotiables. There's some periods of time in their week that is non-negotiable, and it sounds like Friday night is one of those times for you and your wife. So many counselors, coaches, or therapists cite a very painful circumstance in their lives as the reason why they can help others. What do you value the most that emerged from this very difficult experience of kind of an emotional mental breakdown?
That um,
You want me to repeat
that there's
that?
always sorry. So there's always hope. There's always light to that end of the tunnel, and it's only temporary, right? So even though you're thinking that whatever traumatic event is, that's it, that's the end of your world, right? It's not. And if time goes by, I know there's a saying that's time's the best healer. It actually is true. So if you look, as soon as you start getting into that recovery mode and getting the treatment that you need, you actually look back. You're like, that was nothing. That wasn't even a big deal.
Mm.
So knowing that there's always hope has been beneficial. But for me, I deal a lot with the first responder community, law enforcement, military, and fire. I've been through it. Many other people have been through the same thing that I have. Some don't recover. Some really don't recover. But having those that knowledge, those 5 things that I mentioned, having those skill sets is beneficial to everybody. So when I see an officer that's struggling, one of the first things I do is actually get them that help. And it sounds stupid, but one of the first things I do is put them in an ice bath. And they think I'm nuts, and I'm like, hey, just. But they all say the same thing. I heard it works. Yeah, it works. Now get your butt in there, and I help them through that, and then they'll eventually come around and get the treatment that they actually need from a licensed practitioner or a medical doctor.
I've heard some of the people I've interviewed say that you have to decide to heal. You have to decide to take the steps, like your 5 steps, your 5 practices, in order to move yourself forward. It doesn't just happen automatically, always. Are there any other positive outcomes you'd like to mention?
Yeah, the biggest thing is now I'm able to help other people. So I've been through it. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. And this is all for me, right? So I know this works for me. Everybody is a little bit different. That's the biggest thing. As a family, we grew stronger because that was obviously a hard time on the family, but we worked through it together as a family. I think it's important to not discard your family during that time. And it's really hard. It's really hard, not to, because you don't want help from others. You want to do it, especially in the law enforcement. We're stubborn. We're very a personality. We don't want to drag other people into our issues. The family is there for that reason, right? So once they understand what you're going through, they're more prone to help you, and it makes that whole healing process significantly easier because now you have a support system that lives with you. It's not like you're looking for a support system outside. They actually are. They're already there. So just realizing that they're there to help is a big benefit.
The law enforcement and fire professions are, they attract he-men, strong egos, and it must be very hard to be that vulnerable emotionally to admit that you need help.
Yeah, and I struggled with that for a while, and then I came to the realization that I don't care. Like we all have these issues, and it's the people that hold those issues inside. Those are the people that are suffering. And honestly, I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands, of people about my specific situation. I'm not ashamed of it. That's who I am. That's what I went through. And guess what? That's what other people go through. I'm not anything special. That's what a lot of people go through. So that as many people will listen, that's who I'll talk with.
I love that about what you have not only done to take care of yourself, but how magnificently you are sharing that with thousands of others. My son is an officer of the law. I'll be sure to send him a copy of your article. Thank you so much for sharing all of this wisdom. And I recommend the viewers of this interview read the entire article written by Sergeant Joshua Lee, titled Strategies for Rebuilding Life After Trauma. And you might send a link to the article to any of your law enforcement or firefighting buddies. Thank you so much, Sergeant, and I wish you the very best in your career and for the rest of your life.
Thank you. I really do appreciate it.
You are so very welcome. It's been my honor.
Thank you.